Okay, I apologize for that. The storage on my phone must have all been used up, so I had to just delete a bunch of stuff. So, okay, now we're back. So let me explain what just got cut off there. The rise is 2 and the run is 6. Both are positive. Up is positive, right is positive. But when you have your fraction, you have to reduce it. So this becomes 1 over 3. That's a good answer. Always reduce fractions. Okay, part C, this is a vertical line. We have a special way of doing this. This is Hoy and Vux. Hoy, Vux. Hoy is for horizontal. The slope is 0. And the equation is y equals a number. Vux is vertical. U is undefined slope. And x equals a number is the equation. Okay, so when I look at this, here's part C. This is a vertical line. So vertical line is a Vux. The slope is undefined. So there's my answer. M equals undefined. And for D, this is a horizontal line. Horizontal has a 0 slope. M equals 0. So my answer is 0. I don't need to count for those two if I recognize the pattern. Horizontal lines have a 0 slope. Vertical lines have an undefined slope. All right, and then the last one here, number 3. If we have slope from the formula, the formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. In number 8, it says calculate the slope between each pair of points. Well, when they give you 2 points, we'll say this is x1, y1, and this is x2, y2. What we'll do is, instead of, you could graph it and you could count the rise and run, but it would be easier just to substitute into this formula. x1, y1, that's the first point, x comma y. And this is our second point, x comma y. It doesn't matter which one is x1, y1 and which is x2, y2. When I do the formula, what I do is I set up m equals, and I'm going to set 4 parentheses up, 1 for each number that I'm going to substitute. Now you can actually sing the slope formula to the tune Row Row Your Boat. M equals y sub 2 minus y sub 1 all over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. And you can sing that. That's a nice way to remember it. And what we'll do is we just substitute the values into each parentheses. So m equals y sub 2, that's 7, minus y sub 1, that's 5, all over x sub 2, that's 12, minus x sub 1, that's 8. And now what you do is you simplify. 7 minus 5 is 2. 12 minus 8 is 4. Now that fraction, we can still simplify it. We can divide each of these by 2. And what we get is m equals 1/2. 1 over 2. There's your slope. Okay, let's do the same thing part B. So let's label x1, y sub 1, x sub 2, y sub 2. And when I say this, I say x sub 2. And what the sub means, below. X, and then the 2 is below. It's not an exponent. It's not x to the second. It's x sub 2. All right, so we got m equals. I'm going to set up parentheses. The nice thing about this is that all I have to do now is substitute my values. M equals y sub 2 minus y sub 1 all over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Now what happens here is that you're going to subtract a negative number. When you have minus a negative next to each other, we're going to turn both of those to plus. 2 negatives make a positive. So what we have is negative 5 plus 7 over, this would be 1, minus minus is plus plus, that's 1 plus 4. And what we get here is positive 2 over 5. And that's simplified, so that's a good answer right there. The last one here is C. Let's go ahead and label x sub 1, y sub 1, x sub 2, y sub 2. So we'll do m equals y sub 2 minus y sub 1 all over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. So y sub 2 is negative 3. I just copy the numbers in there. If they're negative, I write them as negative. If they're positive, I write them as positive. Y sub 2 minus y sub 1, which is also negative 3, over x sub 2 is 6 minus x sub 1, which is 2. Now what happens here, minus a negative, both those become plus. So I'm going to do negative 3 plus 3, and then I'm going to do 6 minus 2. Negative 3 plus 3 is 0. 6 minus 2 is 4. Now, when you do this, 0 divided by anything, 0 divided by anything is always 0. So the answer to this is 0. What if the 0 had been on the bottom? What if I had done 4 divided by 0? Would that be different? And the answer is yes. It would give you an error, which means it's undefined. But notice the difference between 0 divided by 4, that you can do. But 4 divided by 0 is impossible. Okay? Last thing we'll do here, I didn't put it on this sheet, but let's say we wanted to graph y equals, we'll say, negative 2/3 x plus 1. If I wanted to graph that, I could draw myself an x-axis and a y-axis. And I would look at this. The negative 2/3 is the m, that's the slope. The positive 1 is the b, that's the y-intercept. So if the y-intercept is 1, I would go to the y-axis. Here's 1. And I would put a point there. Now the slope is negative 2 over 3. So what that means is to get another point, my rise and my run, I always put the negative in the top. So my rise would be negative 2, which means I'd go down 2, and then I'd run positive 3 to the right. So I would go negative 2 down from this point. Whoops, I don't want to put a point there. Negative 2 down and then run 3. There's my point. That's not a point there. So then I would connect this, and there's my line. Okay, let's say it was y equals, we'll say 4x. Okay. Now the slope is the number in front of the x. The y-intercept in this case, there's no number here, so the y-intercept would just be 0. Okay? So what I would do is, here's my x-axis, my y-axis. The y-intercept is 0, so it's 0, 0. I would put a point. Okay, now the slope is 4. Think of slope as a fraction. So the number 4 is the same as 4 over 1. So my rise and my run, I would rise 4, it's positive, so I go up, and I'd run positive 1, which is to the right. There's a point, and now I draw the line. Okay? Just count it. Slope is rise over run. And the last example I'll give you here, what if we had an equation like x equals negative 3? X equals negative 3. Now that's a vux. If we go back up to the top here, vux is a vertical line where the slope is undefined. The equation's x equals a number. All right, so for that, it's a vertical line when x is equal to negative 3. So what I would do, here's the x-axis. I would go to negative 3, which is right here, and I would draw a vertical line. So there's x equals negative 3. If it had been, let's say it was y equals, like y equals 2, that would be a hoi, which is horizontal. And horizontal is a y equals, so I'd go to y equals 2, which is here, and I would draw a horizontal line. So there's y equals 2, there's x equals negative 3, and that is the end of the notes.